Welcome to Through Our Lens podcast, the podcast where we focus on empowering the African American community. My guest today, C.T. Kirkley, is the author of Why Me? Boys Are Molested Too. Thank you for joining me.
Yes, man. Thank you for allowing me to come on.
Such a blessing. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in and go ahead and discuss this book, okay? Can you tell our listeners a bit about yourself and what motivated you to write Why Me? Boys Are Molested Too?
Well, I'm married to the lovely Monique Kirk. We have 3 children. Anayla, she's 24, Brendan's 17, and my youngest, Kendall, is 12. I'm a teacher in Lancaster, South Carolina at South Middle School, and I'm pastor of Sanctuary of Life Outreach Center. I wrote the book Why Me? Boys Are Molested Too, basically as a journal to get out the feelings and the emotions that I suffered through molestation. It came after my deliverance from it. I was like, man, this would be an awesome opportunity to help other people that may have gone through a similar situation. One of the things that I experience and know about molestation is it causes you to go into shame, especially being a man, and humiliation. And when I wrote it, to see how many other men experienced the same thing, it was like, okay, I knew that was a God reason to write it.
Well, I'm so glad that you did write it. Like I said, I work in law enforcement, and I'm a safe space for so many children. And a lot of times, quite often, a lot of boys have been molested. They just haven't been provided a safe space where they can let their parents or just other people know that happening without being shamed or feeling like they're going to be looked at as if it's their fault or whatnot. So like I said, I thank you for writing this book. It's going to touch so many people.
Thank you.
So the title of your book, Why Me, is incredibly powerful. Can you talk about why you chose that title and what it represents?
I chose Why Me because I always look at the fact that when people go through trauma, when people go through hurt, especially when it's suffered from somebody else, you're always asking yourself, why me? What made me be the one that they chose to molest, or that person, that uncle to touch? And so it was very important for me to answer that question, why me? And in the book I talk about how even though it was you, God can use a story like that to change someone else's life or help someone else to grow. And so I looked at it as in the story. I remember a movie saying, it was an old movie, and the guy said, why me, brother? And the man said, why not you? And so I started thinking, okay, maybe I was chosen for that moment to be able to go through that. So in the long run, I could help somebody else who's asking that same question, why me?
So sexual abuse of children is a difficult topic, and specifically the abuse of black boys is often under discussed. Why do you think this is the case?
Black boys oftentimes are not taught how to express themselves. And so we create a hard exterior because we feel like that's what a man is supposed to be. I remember when a young boy would cry, we would call him a sissy. Or grow up, don't be a girl, you get a scratch or you hurt yourself in football. What we tell them, get back into the game. And so nobody ever sits down with the African American boy and say, hey, what's really on your heart? What really are you going through? And because those questions are not asked, and some of us have been removed from fatherly figures who may have said, hey, what's on your heart today? What do you want to share? Other than football, other than something out of the ordinary, we haven't been able to communicate our hurts and our pains. And so a lot of times we keep those things bottled up. And that's when it comes out as rage. That's when it comes out through the crime system. That's when it comes out through negative impact in school, because we have so much bottled in that nobody really allows us the opportunity to be able to share.
So what barriers exist in addressing this issue within the black community and in society as a whole?
First thing, I think that because I was able to write it and because I'm able to say, hey, it happened to me, first of all, that door was opened up where people can know, okay, this is not a taboo issue. I remember when the actor Terry Crews said that he was on a Hollywood production and a producer went up and grabbed his hips, and everybody like, you big strong man, you Damien from the movies, you should have been able to knock him out. But they didn't understand that something like that can cause trauma. And here it is, a African American man being honest but being ridiculed for the way that he handled the situation. And so I think the first key is we got to have a compassionate heart, a heart of understanding, and let a person talk out their trauma, let them talk out their hurt. So I think that the first thing is making it where it's not a taboo topic. Normalizing being able to talk about trauma. Normalize being able to talk about molestation or rape so that people can feel like I'm not by myself. Because the first thing that happens in our world is we make it like it's a taboo topic, or we bring humiliation to it. There are people that have been struggling for 30 years that will never say anything about it. But the moment they talk about it, what's the first thing people say? Why you didn't say nothing about that 30 years ago? And it's because you don't know what a person has to go through to get the boldness to be able to share. So the first thing we got to do is respect the person's voice, respect the person's hurt, so that way they can feel comfortable enough to heal. Because if we make it so isolated and so humiliating, that person will never be able to heal properly.
That's true. That's true. So what kind of research did you undertake while writing this book? Did you conduct interviews? And if so, what were some of the most impactful stories you heard? Because
I'm a history teacher, I always know you got to cite scholarly journals and scholarly essays. So I went and researched just for about 3 months. The topic of molestation was connected to a website called 1 in 6. And that's where I got these statistics that 1 in 6 boys have been molested. Many of them don't talk about it. Many of them are afraid to share it. So then I started talking to me, and once I say, hey, listen, I'm about to write this story. And people that I didn't know that were molested started saying, it was me too. Some of them molested by the babysitter girl. Why didn't you share it? Well, because when I did share it, people made me feel like that was a badge of honor. That, hey, this older girl molested you. You ought to feel good about it. What's wrong with you? Boys that talked about family members touching them or being touched by a best friend started coming forth. And I said, you know what? I will never use your name, but the likeness of your story is very important, because people need to know that if a female touches you, that's not a badge of honor. You've been sexually assaulted. We see more and more in today's time that teachers are getting in trouble for sexually assaulting their students. And I'm like, this is very important, because if you think that you are getting a badge of honor for being sexually assaulted, then you're going to try it on the next person, or that cycle will never stop. And so I'm saying, no, you were actually molested, and it needs to be talked about. It needs to be talked about when people tell you, just don't tell nobody. Or if you share it with somebody, they're going to question your own sexuality. Right. And so those things are very important. And so I did a lot of research. I had a lot of testimonials, guys that looked it hard, they looked like they had it all together, that would say, you know what, I never shared this with anybody. And I was like, wow, so I'm not by myself. And I started counting, hey, 1 in 6 men, it is true, that have been touched, that have been molested, that have been exposed to pornography at a young age. We don't look at that as a form of molestation, but you're taking away somebody's innocence, thinking that you're promoting a hard exterior for a man. And so those things were very important to be able to share. Boys that have went through different systems, whether it been jail, whether it been DJJ, have been touched but can't come out and say, hey, you know what? I was raped in jail. I was touched in jail. So what happens? They go out and they give another young female an STD. Why? Because they were afraid to say, you know what? This happened to me inside the system. And so being able to have that voice is very important. And so I think that the men need a Me Too movement as well to be able to say, it didn't just happen to you, it happened to me too.
You're absolutely right, because like I said, I've seen a lot of, especially young African-American boys who look at me like I'm their safe space. They tell me their stories. And so when you look at the crimes that they've committed, murder, it's always a crime against another person, and a lot of times the person they're innocent, and you're like, how can they do something like that? They're broken. Mm-hmm. They're hurting. They're incapable to look at the next person and actually care about their well-being, because a lot of them feel like nobody cared about me.
Exactly.
Somebody touched me. Nobody cared. I had to suck it up. So why am I supposed to care about the next person? And when you see that this unhealed trauma hasn't been treated, and as a result of that, they make bad decisions. Mm-hmm. And as a result of those bad decisions, now these children are facing 20, 30, 40, 50 life sentences. It makes you realize that we definitely need to provide a safe space for our kids. Because with them keeping it bottled up like that, we run into the risk of them hurting innocent people. So, again, I'm glad you wrote this book.
Thank you.
Your book aims to address the abuse. In what specific ways does it do this? What information or perspectives are you hoping to provide readers?
When I tell the story, a lot of people get caught up on chapter 2 because that's when I tell my individual story. And that was the first time I really shared it publicly. And so now from the platform of the book, I'm able to go into a pulpit and say it happened to me too, so that the younger listeners can understand that we're not just talking about Jesus' love, but we're also talking about Jesus' forgiveness. So in the book, I have to address the story, but I also have to address the healing process. So people don't just get stuck in, okay, this happened to you, poor to you, but no, I want to show you how I was able to forgive those that did me wrong. I want to be able to show you how I was able to heal and allow that story to become my testimony that I overcame it with the help of Christ, with the help of counseling, with the help of being able to address it. I was able to heal from it. And so I don't never want to leave a person without a method to heal, because you can heal from your trauma. Your trauma can easily be used to the testimony that you use to help other people get through it. And so just the same way we use David's testimony of fighting Goliath, the same way that we use Jonah's testimony of getting swallowed by a fish, we use our own testimonies to be able to show somebody that God is not finished with you. And so I take you on that emotional journey of how I had to forgive even the one that I recognized and saw a lot. How I was able to forgive and didn't even recant the story or even expect an apology. But God gave me the apology that I needed in order to move forward in my life. And I think some people are stuck in wanting an apology, want somebody to cry out. We want that great T.D. Jakes movie where the man's going to go to the altar and cry out, I'm sorry to you. But that's not going to all the time happen within your trauma. Your mother may not understand what she did to you back in the days when she was on drugs, and may not never give you the apology. Some of my people are dead and can't give you the apology. So you can't stay stuck because you can't get the apology, but you got to be able to know how to move forward even without the apology. And I never got an apology, never expected an apology, but I knew that I was healed because I was able to share it. I was able to share it as a teacher, knowing that, hey, if this book goes out there, my students may know what I went through. Their parents are going to know what I went through. My church is going to know what I went through. But I believe that God chooses certain people to be able to have a boldness to be able to do that. So I'm not humiliated. I'm not ashamed about it. I can talk about it. And I've been able to address it with people who would never vocally say what they went through, but was able to say, you know what, I thank you for being able to write that book because it helped me to heal.
What are some of the unique challenges faced by Black boys who have experienced sexual abuse compared to other demographics?
I think boys in general, because you're not taught to express that, and it's so taboo of a topic. Females, you see it all the time, plasters. This lady was molested, this lady was raped, this lady went through this, but you never really see boys go through those things or hear about boys receiving counseling from the situations they went through. What do we tell the boys? Suck it up. Hey, I'm sorry it happened to you. Move on. All right, and so this man now is damaged in his relationships. He's damaged in his marriage. His wife don't understand why he's going through certain challenges, certain things in his life. And it all attributes to he stopped growing at the age that he was broken. And so we don't deal with brokenness a lot. We don't deal with the shame and the abuse that goes through broken. We often talk about the woman with the issue of blood and how she reached out to Jesus, but we don't talk about all those years. She was isolated, feeling humiliated, feeling like she couldn't go to nobody before she was able to get the help. And I think a lot of people are in that process moment where they can't process what they're going through and how this relates and how can a good God allow this to happen to me, and how can I go to church and hear all y'all shouting, running and jumping, but nobody's dealing with the isolated issue in which I'm going through, because nobody's preaching molestation over the pulpit. Nobody's preaching how to rebound from your hurt. Everybody's telling me to shout 3 times and to run around church, and we know that that's not real life. We know that that's just like telling a homeless person God's going to feed you while they're sitting there starving. You know, God will deal with the issue first and then be able to minister to you effectively. And so I think that we have to deal with the issues, and especially for our boys, we got to be able to sit our boys down and say, hey, anything on your heart, I'm willing to listen. And also, in order to win your trust, I can tell you some things that's on my heart so that we can start that communication. The next book that I'm writing now deals with how to deal with men being vulnerable. Because a lot of times we are afraid to share. We're afraid it's going to come back up in an argument. We're afraid it's going to be used as a tool against us. We're afraid because we've never seen anybody else have to be vulnerable. You know, men don't never see their father sit down with their mother and say, listen, let me cry with you. Let me share this with you. And so that young man can know, oh, okay, I can grow up and be vulnerable. I remember growing up, the most excitement that a man would get from another man was when he played sports. Or if he had a lot of girlfriends, oh man, you the ladies' man, you were a sport, but never, oh man, you're the one that was honest in your feelings and in your emotions. How are you on your process? We see men all the time that are raised with no fathers. And men don't go up and say, hey, can I be a mentor to you? I know what you're going through. I've been there. But the minute they get in trouble, first thing we see is, oh, they came from a broken household.
Amen.
They didn't have a father. So we saw the situation ahead of time,
Amen.
but didn't step into it. And I often say this, I don't believe that God called me to be a teacher just to be able to teach social studies or a subject or to get a paycheck. But there are young kids that look and don't have a father that can see somebody that's promoting positivity and say, wait a minute, that's the first black man I ever seen that told me I could be a successful truck driver. That's the first black man that told me I could own my own plumbing company. That's the first black man that actually cared enough to tell me that I could be anything that I wanted to be if it's not a basketball player or a football player, because I already know every kid ain't going to college. But guess what? You can be a truck driver and make a lot of money. You can make a six-figure income being a welder. And these are the things that we have to tell our black boys that, listen, success is what you measure it to be. Ooh. My success is being able to tell a black man, listen, yeah, I went through that, but I didn't stop growing from that. I was able to heal from that. I was the boy that was trying to be the class clown. I was the boy that had the low self-esteem because I'm trying to process my trauma. I wanted people to love me. I want to be accepted. I want everybody to cheer for me, not realizing when I go home in the back room, I'm depressed. I didn't feel like I was good enough. I didn't feel like I was worthy. And I had those bouts. Those triggers come up at different points in my life where I could be on a high and fall straight to the gutter because I couldn't process my emotions.
Okay. So without giving away spoilers, can you discuss some of the key themes explored in the book?
Key things explored in the book is, first of all, first chapter is really just the research on the fact of molestation, how common it is that nobody talks about it. It is very, very common. Then I talk about, of course, my story. Then I go into the healing process. I even talk about in a chapter how I was able to hide in the church, not realizing some of the temptations were going to be in the church that were going to reignite the perversion and the trips that I went down trying to battle against pornography, which I didn't realize was a byproduct of what I was trying to process as a 6-year-old boy that was being molested, and how I dealt with perversion all the way up into my adulthood. I talked then about how to forgive and how to go from being broken to actually God making you whole. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it deals more with trauma in general than just focusing on one simple molestation, because you can have trauma through grief, you can have trauma through a loss of a parent, you can have trauma through not feeling like you were in a position that you wanted to be in. I know people that felt like at the age of 40 they should be more successful than they are right now. That's a trauma that you got to deal with. How are you going to impact the next 20 years? Or are you going to stay stuck in the failure? And so being able to get people through that emotional journey and help them to heal was very, very important for me to put in the book.
This topic is emotionally charged. How did you as an author cope with the weight of the subject matter during the writing process?
It took a long time to write chapter 2. I often got up from the computer many times because I could feel those old emotions. I could feel that crying coming back. Because now I'm writing a book. I think I'm 30, late 30s, maybe early 40s. I wrote it during COVID time. So when I was writing the initial process, it took me a while to finish it. It was a older man looking at himself as a younger boy saying, oh my God, I wish I could help you. So now I'm empathizing and sympathizing with my own self, not even realizing it. Like I'm like, okay, all of those people that you have built yourself to be over the years, now you see the real you that you kept hidden, and now other people are going to see the real you that was hidden, and now they're going to have sympathy for the little boy, empathy for the little boy. And so it was like, okay, let me stop, let me pause. How much of my real self do I want to put in the book? Because the things that happened to me were very humiliating to a man. Do I want to put that in the book and have people look at me in a strange way right now? Or do I want to be totally transparent and honest? I remember sitting at a book signing and a young man got up crying. He talked about the pain that he went through. He talked about, and I'm talking about the physical pain of having his uncle grab him and do what he did to him. And he began to break down. And people understood then, this is more than a book, this is real life. That this is not a fiction book. This is nothing I wrote because I haven't even made a significant amount of money from it. But this is a book that I hope will heal people and get people to understand and realize This is something that people really go through, but they keep hidden, and all you see is the surface things. You never see the real intent. When I did the book signing, I had other men come up and they shared their stories, and they were like the first person they were vulnerable with their wife, and their wife was like, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know, dating you, that I was dealing with this, or that was on the inside of you." And so it was so important for me in the writing process to be able to say, "Okay, listen, I'm being totally transparent with you for the sake that I believe that you can heal."
What are some of the preventative measures that parents, educators, and community leaders can take to protect Black boys from sexual abuse?
They gotta I think you gotta have conversations with your child. You gotta be like, "Okay, this is a no-no. Any man touch you in your thigh, that's a no-no. Any woman that tells you to do that, that's a no-no." Get them to understand what it looks like first, so when they recognize it, because a lot of kids don't know what it is until after the fact of being told what it is. But get them to recognize what it looks like, that you don't have to be ashamed in telling your parent. You don't have to be ashamed of saying no, that if anybody tells you don't tell nobody, it's automatically wrong. That I don't care if it's your grandpa, I don't care if it's somebody you love, you do not have to go along with this. We have to educate our children early. Same way with gun violence. You tell them right off the bat, listen, if you do something by yourself, if you do something that's going to get you in trouble, I'm not going to come to visit you in them jails every Sunday. I'm letting you know before you even do it. It's going to be a lonely road where you're going, because all them friends you had out here are not going to show up and put money on your books. And I think when we give preventative measures, that, hey, if you don't get the diploma, it's going to be harder for you. So you need to get a GED. If you don't learn understanding how to write in cursive down the road when you need a signature, I think those preventive measures, having those forefront conversations, are better than waiting till something happen and then trying to go and heal from that. And being able to have that safe space, tell your child, ahead of time, anything you need to talk to me about, even if it feels like I'm getting upset about it, understand that I'm trying to process my emotions, but I respect your honesty. Not going to always agree with what you say, but I'm going to respect your honesty and your transparency, and will never hold over your head anything you tell me. I think those things help the process of a kid being able to see a situation, say, "No, I already know that's wrong, and I'm going to tell my mama. Right. I'm going to tell my daddy." And so situations like that will definitely help you. I remember a situation came up, and I was a little bit older, and this guy was trying to throw a shot at me, and I said, "Hey, do my mama know that when she tried to say that you could be a good mentor, she knew you had to sit you in this situation?" Like, "No, it ain't like that. It ain't like that. It was like that, but you got caught in it, because I'm going to tell my mom." It was like bagging away from it. If I didn't have that preventative measure, then that guy could have went farther, and I would never have saw it coming.
Right. That's right. How does the concept of toxic masculinity play a role in the sexual abuse of boys?
Toxic masculinity, we see it now, and I'm not going to throw out nobody's name because I don't want you to get in trouble, but we see it a lot of times in our movies. Mm-hmm. The black man is hardcore. He doesn't treat his queen right. He's violent. He's got an attitude. And so this is projected out to our young boys almost as this is the exception. Mm-hmm. This is how you're going to be. You're going to be hardcore. You're going to be the rapper. You're going to have the teardrop tattoos on your face. This is what it means to be hard. And why that is being produced to us on so many levels is breaking down the person that we are intended to be. And many people, especially in my generation, we didn't start catching life's understanding until we were well in our 30s. That everything we thought was cool and down, from wearing the shoes to getting the fancy jewelry, that it didn't mean anything when you look at mutual funds, life insurance, saving, buying houses. And so toxic male masculinity simply says you have no feelings. You have no emotions. You can't express yourself. That if you express yourself, you're more feminine than you are masculine. And so boys don't cry. Boys don't get emotional. Boys can't watch a sad movie and feel anything. Don't let nobody see you crying. So we say, "I ain't crying. It's something in my eye." Because that's toxic. That's how we a lot of times have been raised. That if you don't play football, and if you get injured, get back in there. And now we're seeing these athletes that have CTE because they had a concussion but wouldn't say anything, wanted to get right back in the game, playing with broken bones, getting right back in the game, and they thought that's what it meant to be a man. And now they can't relate to their children. They can't relate to their wives. They can't relate to their community. Things that are going on around them, they're so removed from it because they were taught that's what a male looked like. He is removed from anything other than paying bills and going home getting sleep. I remember when I was little watching shows where all the man had to do was bring his check home and he was considered a man. Or now we're seeing the demand for men to be emotional, to be sympathetic, to care. And it's like a lot of men are like, man, I wasn't raised that way. I don't know what that looks like. And so we got to be able to teach this new generation, because this new generation is already coming up with an understanding of what it's like to be negative. Everything on social media is pointing to a negative thing. You can share happy birthday, president. And before you get down 15 comments, there's already something negative in there, because we're living in a negative mindset, a negative world, and we got to be able to teach our young people that this is not the way the world works. That you're going to do better if you have networking connections. You're going to do better if you have friends that are in different places rather than stay around the people that are negative. And so I think that we have to stop saying that being a male is this looks like, and start saying no, to be a male is different areas, it's different facets. It's like a fruit basket. You got different fruit to be able to help you in different situations.
What resources are available for Black boys who have experienced sexual abuse and their families? Can you recommend any organizations or websites?
I know 1 in 6 website organization is very powerful. Counseling is very powerful. Journaling is very powerful. And there are a lot of resources. I tell parents this all the time. The same way we can find a trail ride and we can find a cookout is the way we can be able to find resources.
That's right.
If you can find a trail ride in a city or state you don't even live in, you can find a resource right there in your child's community. Being able to talk to your children, because one of the greatest resources a lot of our children need is just to simply be able to talk it out. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that parent just being able to be that listening voice. And parents, understand this, you may not have all the answers, but sometimes just you listening, saying, we're going to work this out together. And I'm going to invest in any resources that you need. Maybe they ain't meant for them to play football that year. Maybe they need to spend that year in therapy, learning how to deal with their emotions. You got children now that can't deal with their emotions, that cut on themselves. Parents see the scars and see the cuts and feel like, oh, they just going through a process, just a teenage year. No, that child is suppressing something that's so powerful that if you don't get to that, you're going to be the one going to the next funeral of a child that couldn't process it all and decide to take their own lives. Because a lot of us live in the moment and not realize there's something outside of the moment that you got to live to. I tell any kid or anybody that's suicidal, if you can wake up tomorrow, that's going to be another opportunity for you to get it right. But if you take yourself out in that moment, you don't give yourself an opportunity to heal, to grow, or to do anything great. And so I would say research those resources. Invest in those resources. Help your child to understand they're not by themselves. And that will help you more so than anything.
How can allies outside the Black community effectively support efforts to address the sexual abuse of Black boys without being intrusive or overstepping?
Very important, because everybody needs an advocate. An advocate does not always look the same. When they started the Me Too movement, somebody got the boldness to say Me Too. Every movement that the African American culture has achieved that was successful had outsiders come in and do it. I always go to the story of Leoza, who came down and helped out the Martin Luther King in the march, and she was killed. And because a white lady who had 4 kids was murdered, it put more national attention on the cause and the hurt. The Birmingham 4 girls that went to church and got blew up put more emphasis on the cause. Emmett Till put more emphasis on the cause. And so it may be somebody that's removed from the situation that actually brings the highlight to, hey, this is going on in the community. And I recognize the problem. So I think that we all need those advocates to be able to say, your story is important to me. I'll tell you this, the Black Lives Matter movement didn't start from a black man who was killed by a police officer. It was started by women and got national attention because women said, you know what, we're tired of our brothers being murdered by law enforcement. And it grew into a movement. And so sometimes it's that mother that says, you know what, I'm tired of Black boys or boys in general being molested. I want to take a stand as a caring mother. And other caring mothers come along and be able to impact and influence the cause. And so I would tell anybody, we need advocates out there saying, hey, it's okay, my brother, to be able to go through that. You're no less than a man because you went through that situation. But guess what? You can be the best man in the world because of that situation.
What are the legal and systemic changes that need to happen to better protect black boys from abuse and to hold perpetrators accountable?
I think in the justice system as well, we need to see that the justice system really is beneficial to all. There are crimes women can do and get less time than the man who does the same crime.
Right.
Why? Because women will always be able to attribute their crime to a hurt, whereas a male cannot get that same pleasure. Black boy stands up and says, I didn't have a father in the home, I watched my mama struggle. This is why I went out and sold drugs. The first thing we tell him is this: you could have found another way. Same situation with the girl, mama struggling, dad wasn't there. Oh, she's a victim of trauma. Let's get her to help. And so the legal system does not work for men in total, especially black men, unless you have money. Because where there's money, there's power. So some of these things we see in celebrities get off with, Gene who ain't got no money ain't gonna get off with that same.
Right.
All right, and so that's why I always say protective measures is don't do the crime whatsoever, because when you sit up there, you're hoping people are going to have sympathy for you, and it's probably not going to happen. Because people now are saying, I'm tired of the story of they didn't have a daddy. I'm tired of the story of they were molested. I'm tired of the story, and so throw the book at them. Whereas the female, oh, I sympathize with what she's going through. So the legal system must begin to tear down this foundation so it can rebuild. It needs to look at cases that are similar and say, why did one person get 15 months probation, but this brother got 15 years?
Amen.
You know, until that happens, and I think the sympathy comes when even people across the aisle, I need that white police officer to see the greatness in me, just like I need the black police officer to see the greatness in me. Because if you can see the greatness of me and not my race, then guess what? Justice can work for me.
Yes.
See, justice is not giving everybody a building block so we can all stand up and see over the fence. Justice is take the fence down so that we all can see without any blocks. I'm not asking you for a block to stand on. I'm asking that justice be fair. I'm asking that when our young boys go before the court system and you know their situation, not only are they going to be in the system, but there's going to be help in the system so when they get out, they don't become a repeated offender because everything is isolated from them. And so those things are very important because we can be honest with ourselves. Prison is big money. Privatized institutions make money. Why do they think so many rich people invest in prisons more than hospitals? Why do we think that the third grade reading level is looked at as a central point of, if they can't read by third grade, let's build more jails because they're going to probably get into prisons? Why do we think there's not Starbucks in the hood? Why do we think that there's not a lot of resources that come into the hood? Why? Because we're almost setting up a trap that either you're going to move out of the hood or you're going to get in trouble in the hood. And so into our justice system, our mayors, our lawyers, I say this a lot of times, as a preacher, the only time I see a black politician is when it's time for them to get elected. Other than that, they're spending time on the other side of town and not in the side of town that they're representing. And until these things are addressed, we have to have advocates to address the situation. I'm not expecting for Donald Trump to see this because he didn't never live that life. But I'm expecting for those who say that the justice system is supposed to be fair to look at these court cases and say, wait a minute, ho. How did this little girl get off with the same thing this boy did? But we're using her story but can't use his story to be able to look at the situation in a total role. Oh,
that was powerful. Now, you just said a mouthful. That's powerful because I work in it. I see it all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not fair. No. It's not. So it's definitely some changes that need to be made. What is one thing you hope listeners will take away from this conversation and from reading your book?
I hope listeners will get an understanding of what's going on in the community, something that I felt like was hidden. The first thing that I do as an author, I go around and I look at other resources to see, are there resources out there like mine? So I didn't find a lot of stories on molestation pinpointing toward males. And so it's not even for those listeners out there, it's not even a black book, even though I'm a black author, but it is a book that focuses on males being molested. And I think a lot of women read it because now they can understand that my husband was there. I had a wife that reached out and said, can you talk to my husband? Because I read your book and gave it to him and he just broke down crying and said, you know what, we've been married 30 years and I never shared this situation. Now you know why I didn't want to go around my uncle. Every time you asked me, I didn't want to go to his house no matter what he had. And it was like an eye-opening experience because she never knew. Some of us that have been molested have to look at the people that touched us. Some of us are afraid because we know that that's everybody's favorite uncle, that's everybody's favorite cousin, that's everybody's favorite aunt. And the minute you say that they did that, you're going to be isolated from the family. People don't know how many people would support the molester and not the person that's been molested. That they'll say, well, he wouldn't do that. You had a misunderstanding. Or don't tell nobody because you can mess up the whole family. Because we're so protective of image. So when I wrote this book, I was already my city's Dreamkeeper Award, which is the highest award that you can get in our city, besides the key to the city. You ain't got the key to the city yet, Mr. Mayor. But that's one of the highest awards that you can get in the city. I was already an established pastor. I was already an established teacher. People knew me from the community for great works, but never knew I had dealt with the situation. I never told anybody because I was image conscious. That if anybody ever knew what I struggled with, it would hurt my image. And there are so many people that go to church that don't realize that your pastor may be dealing with having a protected image. That the person in your community that you think got it all going. Look at these celebrity fallouts now. That we thought, oh my God, you won't top it all. What it feel like to be a millionaire? What it feel like to get on a plane and just go where you want to go? But been dealing with secret issues that they never can go on Jay Leno or David Letterman or Larry King and talk about their real issues. They got to talk about their movies. They got to talk about their success. They got to talk about a funny story, but can never go on and say, you know what? I was touched. I was molested and I was hurt. What would that do to see before all the stuff came out with certain actors and entertainers? They got ahead of their stories and say, you know what? I've been wrestling with this for so many years. I want to tell it before it comes and exposes me. And so I think that this book is one of those moments where I say, you know what, before anybody can tell my story, let me tell my story in the hopes that it helps somebody else that can't tell their stories. Because we have people who are in silence that may be still going through the emotional hang-ups. Listen, I already knew I was going to face hate, I was going to face backlash, and I would tell anybody this, why would I have to lie on the story that I'm not getting rich from? I'm not out here writing Harry Potter and became a billionaire author. If that was the case, I'd write fantasy all day. I could have wrote this book from somebody else's perspective. I didn't have to use the word I. I could have made up a name and said, you know what, but I wanted to tell my story because I believe that it was important for me to be able to tell the story and be able to let other people know that you don't have to be okay with abuse. You don't have to be okay with molestation. And if somebody loves you enough to share that with you, please guard it like you would guard anything, because it takes a lot of courage and boldness. And I think during the time I wrote the story, I remember one of the Supreme Court justices was about to get sworn in, and this lady came forth and said, hey, he touched me about 30 years ago. At this time, Mr. Cosby was going through his thing, and people were like, well, why would anybody bring up something from the 1970s? Oh, well, I don't believe you because you would have said something back then. I was like, well, here I am in my 30s and didn't say nothing about what happened to me for 6 years. Since when I was 6 years old, didn't tell my mom, didn't tell my dad, didn't tell pastors, didn't even tell my wife what happened to me. So you're going to bash these women because they didn't say nothing about something that happened in the 70s or something that happened when they were young. But you're not looking at the fact that it's probably humiliating, it's probably disgusting, it's so hurtful that until you get the boldness to share it, you're not going to share it. And so I began to sympathize with those women that went through that. I was like, you know what? I can't talk down about the woman that didn't say nothing for 20 years because I didn't say nothing for 20 years or 30 years and was trying to go on living an image and didn't realize it. And there are some of you out there today that have some things that you put under your mattress. You are afraid that if you share it, it's going to mess up your image, it's going to mess up your likability. But I want to tell you now, until you can properly heal, you're living a fake life. Because there are going to be triggers that's going to come and push you and take you right back to that dark place until you heal. And so you got to be able to get those things out so that you can begin to heal properly. I often say this, the woman with the issue of blood, had not she risked shame, humiliation, she would have never got healed. She could have stayed at home and bled for the rest of her life. But she said, I'm going where my healing is, and even if he ain't got to see me in the face, if I can just touch it, I'll be healed. And I believe that is so many of us, our testimony needs to be that I need to be in a position where I can heal without being ashamed, without being afraid, without feeling like I'm isolated or by myself. I need to be able to heal so that I can give the best life. I can break generational influences. I can raise my children. I'm able to love on my children more because of what I went through. I'm able to raise on because I was that kid up until 8 years old that was raised by a single mother. We lived in the project, slept on the floor. I tell my kids this every school year. I remember when we had roaches, and my mama said this, one day we're going to have a bed. See, our goal was not to get Jordans. It wasn't to get a fancy car. Our goal was to get a bed. And then she got a bunk bed. I watched her work hard and do everything that she could do until my stepfather came in and stepped up. And so I'm able to tell somebody, I'm able to tell that kid that I'm talking to in the classroom, you ain't by yourself. You're not the first kid that's been raised without a father or a mother figure or raised by a grandmother. But you can also be that kid to go on and do great things. And so I would tell anybody this, you can heal from any situation because you have faith, because you have belief, and surround yourself with people that believe in your healing and push you toward that healing. I think it's so important.
Where can our listeners purchase your book and learn more about your work?
Oh, that book is on every major book outlet. It's on Amazon. It's on Goodreads. It's on Thrift Books. Hey, if you don't want to pay a lot of money, I'm sure it's on Thrift Books now. You can get it at a discount. It's on Goodreads now. It's on Author Publishing House. If you really want to help, go to authorpublishinghouse.com and get it straight from my publisher, and you'll get out there. But anywhere Amazon is very big, and if you go and you can get a copy and you can give a copy to someone else. It does good on moving that Amazon list, but I'm telling you, it was a book that when I wrote it, I felt the most relief from it. I have other books, but this one right here really was allowed me to be able to say, you know what, I'm out there now. My grandfather always said this, you can't be shamed at one time. And if you tell your story, you can't never be shamed. How are you going to tell me something that I'm already forgotten? You know, so you can purchase it at any major outlet, and we'll definitely be grateful.
So what's next for you? Do you have any other projects in the works that you'd like to share?
Oh yeah, I'm writing this book now on male vulnerability, and I'm looking to try to get it out at least by September or October. It's a book again about teaching males how to be able to be vulnerable, and it's really written so that a female can see how to encourage vulnerability within their man, or some things that females may do wrong that cuts down the vulnerability of men, and how they can learn. So I always learn this, that sometimes it is not so much of the person going through, but the person that's dealing with the person that's going through, and how to be able to address that situation. That's very important. You know, how to address the situation when your family member has a mental illness. How to address, we see now the uprising in dementia and Alzheimer's and all of these different things. How to be able to help that person along is what a lot of us need to be trained in, because we don't a lot of times get that training until they go through one of them hard situations. And so rather than having the male that's totally shut down or removed from his emotions, how can you foster that along? So I call the chapter Love Without Armor. And many of us are loving males that have armor on. You don't really know his thoughts. You don't know his fears. You don't know what he holds on to. All you know is the outwardly layers of what he's showing you, because he's got armor around his heart, out of fear, out of past relationships, out of the way he was raised. And so that project, I'm proud of that one as well.
I'm looking forward to purchasing that book.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to you coming back. Are you going to come back and talk about that book?
We're going to talk about that book. We're going to break that book down. We're going to break that book down.
Well, I thank you so much for coming on my platform. I thank you for just sharing your testimony. I thank you for being so impactful. I thank you for everything you're doing in our community. We need more people, especially black men, to step up for our families, for our children, for us, okay? So thank you so much. And it has been a pleasure. Y'all make sure y'all go get this book, Why Me Boys Are Molested Too. I have it. Can't wait. Listen, I purchased it Friday. As soon as I seen it, I purchased it on Kindle. Y'all get the book, okay? I'm on chapter 1 because I worked this weekend. Y'all know your girl worked 12 hours, okay? So I worked the whole weekend, but just know when I get home today, I'm definitely gonna dive in. So to my audience, I love y'all. Continue to like and subscribe. Be blessed.